because Thatcher privatized the electricity system in the UK and introduced the idea that privatization is a good thing for the people, not for the oligarchs, but for the people. The idea being that the market knows better how to reduce costs than the state. Privatization in the United Kingdom is crucial because the model of the United Kingdom was then extended to the rest of the European Union. That's why it's important to understand the two phases, the two steps in which it happened. The first step was to say, okay, what's your price now? How much are you paying for your electricity? We're going to cap it. We're not going to allow the price to go beyond what you're paying. And then we're going to privatize, and we will allow competition to bring it down. If it brings it down, you gain, consumer, right? If they don't succeed, they are still capped at 50. So you've got nothing to lose, you only have things to gain. That was a very powerful argument. If you add to that the fact that they were giving away shares to the people, who then, of course, sold them to the oligarchs, that it was impossible to stop privatization of gas initially and then electricity. Second phase was to say, but who am I as a politician to be deciding what the cap of the price is, the maximum price? Why should politicians decide that? Let the market do it. So that's phase two, the more toxic phase of privatization, which is responsible for the fact that we are having bouts of energy poverty and more general poverty in Europe. The second phase was to say this: instead of having ministers or bureaucrats deciding the maximum price, what you're going to do is we're going to simulate a market. We can't have a market when it comes to electricity. We need to simulate, to pretend we have a market. Why can't we have a market when it comes to electricity? Well, the only way we could have a market of electricity is, imagine if there were 30, 50 different cables, electrical cables coming into your home. And you could choose which one you're going to take your electricity from. Then there would be a market. Then there would be some kind of competition between different providers. There's one. So they simulate the market. And how do they do that? So they say, okay, we're going to split electricity, the electricity company that used to be the state-owned electricity company. We're going to split it in at least three parts. First will be power generation. So each power plant, you have a coal-fired power station, you have a natural gas-fired power station, you have a bunch of solar panels, some windmills, you have a nuclear power station. Each one of them becomes a company. And these companies compete with one another in the wholesale market. So they compete to provide the system with a wholesale price. Okay, that's one part. The second part is the network, the grid. That belongs to another company. And then there is the part where electricity leaves the grid to go into your home. And that's where you create 10, 5, 8, 20 providers, electricity providers, who compete with one another in the market of buying the electricity from the grid, which has bought it from the producers, and then selling it to us, consumers, firms and households, competing with one another. So you simulate competition between the producers, they produce the wholesale price, and then you have the providers who are competing with one another. The idea there is to allow competition to shrink the distance between the wholesale price and the retail price. Again, that was phase two of privatization. And this is what is now prevailing in Europe. When you simulate a market, you need to have certain government-imposed rules, simply because you don't have a real market. Today, there was an auction in the Netherlands. Well, it's based on, it's done digitally, so it's not physically. I mean, the servers where the auction takes place are in the Netherlands. The producers supposedly bid amongst themselves about who is going to provide the system. But the interesting thing is that it's exactly the opposite of what common sense would tell you should happen. When it comes to a proper auction and you've got people selling stuff, you would expect that the company or the person offering the lowest price wins, right? No. In this market, the company offering the highest price wins. And then the price is the same for everybody. It's called marginal cost price. And then supposedly the providers compete with one another to reduce the retail price to that maximum marginal wholesale price. Now, if this sounds complicated, it is because it was intended to be complicated, so the citizens of Europe do not understand that this is a scam against them, even during the good times. Proof of that is that since privatization, the difference between the cost of producing an average kilowatt hour and the retail price has trebled. Yes, the cost of production is going up because the price of natural gas is going up. But that does not explain, the war in Ukraine does not explain why the profit margins of the firms is getting larger. Are we clear on this? Yesterday, I spoke in the Greek parliament and I exposed a scam of the Greek government. Back in March, 15th of March it was, we presented in parliament a proposal on how to shield consumers from skyrocketing prices. What we said was this: it is crazy that because the price of electricity produced from natural gas is skyrocketing because the price of natural gas is skyrocketing, it's crazy, mad, that electricity coming out of solar panels, which costs nothing to produce, once you have the solar panel, it is free. The private company that is selling solar produced kilowatt hours should get for that kilowatt hour the same price that it would get had it produced it from the most expensive natural gas. And you don't need to compensate, to subsidize electricity prices. All you need to do is to eliminate these super profits. So we proposed something really very simple, that every kilowatt hour, the price of it should be set by the state equal to its average cost plus 5%. We're saying, okay, nobody should lose money. Even those capitalist entrepreneurs who are profiting, let's not, okay, don't lose money. What is your cost of producing a kilowatt hour or a megawatt hour from hydro? It's 80 euros. Okay, 80 euros plus, let's say, 4 euros of a 5% profit, 84. What is it from solar? Is it 50? Okay, 50 plus 3 of a profit. If you're producing from natural gas, it's very expensive. It's 400 euros because the price of natural gas is skyrocketed. Okay, 400 plus 5%. If you do this and you sum up over all sources of power, of electrical power, we would have had back in March a reduction in the average price of electricity of more than 50%, without any subsidization, without the state, borrowing money, without taxing people, without anything. All that would happen is the super profits of the firms with the lowest level of marginal cost would be eliminated by a price cap. Sometime in the middle of August, it turned out, on the 6th of July, had legislated something that seemed very much like what we were proposing. I was getting ready to stand in Parliament and thank the government for doing the right thing until I discovered that it's a complete and utter fraud. Why am I talking about Greece? Why do the rest of you care? I'll tell you why you care, and then I will explain the fraud. Because yesterday, Ursula von der Leyen came out and announced that the Greek government's scam will be Europeanized. Now, listen to what the Greek government is doing. The first inkling we had that this is a scam is when it mentioned that the auction, the daily auction for the wholesale price continues. If you have a maximum price that is imposed by government on every different power station, why do you need the auction? Isn't that the obvious question to ask? This is what they do. Okay. Remember, the price for every megawatt hour that the government imposed from hydro works was 85 euros. Okay? I looked at what the auction yielded, the price. It was 700 during this period, 700. The price cap was meant to be, for those kilowatt hours produced by hydroworks, it was meant to be 85. Okay? Or 112 for some other ones. Takes the 112, which is a bit higher. So this is how it works. The producer of that kilowatt hour or megawatt hour receives the 700 euros that has been determined by the auction in the Netherlands, right? But then they have to give back to the Greek state the difference between the 700 and the price cap of 112, which is, or 88, 588. So far, no scam, just stupidity, just bureaucracy. Well, here's where the scam comes. The government does not take this money in order to give it to consumers. No. The government takes this money to give it to the retail companies. Now, if you look at every market almost in Europe, the same shareholder that owns the producer owns the retail company. Ah, got you. So it is as if I have, I have a company that is producing electricity, and I have a company that is a retail company. So the government, what it does is, they let the pseudo auction determine the price at 700. Okay, they force me to return to the state from my left pocket, which is my pocket as a producer, 588 euros to the government, and the government puts it in my right pocket. Now, is it any wonder that the consumer feels no relief? Then what the government does is, okay, to help you, dear consumer, I'm going to borrow money. The government will borrow money, add it to the government budget, to subsidize your electricity bill. In other words, to allow you to give the oligarch the money in my pocket that the government has taken from one pocket and put it in another pocket. Now, if this is not a scam, I do not know what the word scam means. This is the definition of a scam. This is happening in Greece. It's been happening since the 6th of July. And now this is the proposal by the European Commission in all its glory and greatness for how we're going to deal with. Now, why are they doing all this? Because complexity is in the interest of the oligarchy. I just took 23 minutes to explain this to you. No media are going to give me 23 minutes in Greece to explain this to the people out there. No, the government's doing nothing. The government are agents of the oligarchy. They are crooks and they are thieves. And this is a clear-cut case of destroying the capacity of the majority of Europeans to make ends meet in the interest of an oligarchy. And the third thing that we must do, and I know that that sounds controversial, but it would be my proposal, end sanctions on Russian energy. The only people who benefit from the sanctions on Russian gas and oil are the Russian oligarchs and the European oligarchs. It is not helping Ukraine. It is not undermining Putin.
If you think about the political narrative and the media take right now, people in Europe are being asked to suffer in solidarity with Ukraine, to pay astronomical bills, to go cold. And really what it comes down to is that we're not doing it for Ukraine. We're not doing it to hurt Putin. If you look at the true crisis in Europe, it's the fact that our society has given up, as you said, Meta, we've given up on the state. We've given up on politics. Politics has given up on us. Politicians don't serve us. They serve huge political and economic and geopolitical interests. And you see that again and again. It's so obvious, people don't even blink anymore. Yanis spoke about how European oligarchs and Russian oligarchs are profiting. American oligarchs, the United States in general, has played Europe for fools this past year. They are running, they're laughing all the way to the bank. Their NATO, their geopolitical Trojan horse has found a reason to exist. Their military-industrial complex is pumping out weapons and cashing in like not since the Iraq war. And their liquid natural gas exports are through the roof. we have a situation where the biggest geopolitical and economic players are benefiting from the status quo, both in Europe and the United States and in Russia. So we're stuck with this situation because it doesn't serve us, the people, it serves those big interests. From now on, we cannot go to the same political parties, to the same politicians for change. We cannot turn to those same people for solutions. We need to create those solutions ourselves.